It was New Year's Eve, and I was hiding in the kitchen of someone else's house, nursing a warm beer and pretending to scroll through texts I wasn't getting. I hadn't planned to come to this party. My friend Caleb had dragged me, saying, "You'll regret staying home. It's New Year's. You need something to shake you up." What I needed, honestly, was sleep, or maybe a quiet night watching movies alone in my apartment. But instead, I was here, half-buzzed, completely overdressed, and one more fake laugh away from dipping out early. I'd been single all year, and the dating scene had left me so bruised and cynical that I'd quietly decided I wasn't even going to try anymore. Sometime around 10:30, I sent myself a voice memo on the back porch like a total loser. No dating in 2026. Focus on you. No games, no chasing, no distractions. Just peace. So of course he walked in at 11:53 p.m. It was one of those subtle entrances. No dramatic doors swinging open, no grand reintroduction to the party. Just a guy in a navy coat brushing snow off his shoulders and offering the host a sheepish, late smile. I only noticed him because the room seemed to still around him for a second. Not because he was loud or flashy, he wasn't, but because he looked like someone who didn't do these kinds of parties often. And because he caught me staring within 30 seconds. He had a scruffy jawline like he'd shaved yesterday and didn't care if it showed. His hair was a little messy, the kind that looks better the less effort it gets. I pretended to check my phone again, hoping he hadn't noticed the way my eyes locked on his mouth. He made his way toward the drinks table, and for a minute, that was it. Then he looked up and smiled, directly at me. I looked over my shoulder like an idiot, no one behind me. Just me and a deflated balloon on the counter. I smiled back, but it came out more like a wince. He started walking over. "Mind if I stand here?" he asked, nodding toward the counter beside me. I shrugged. "It's your party now, I think." "I've been hanging out with the seltzer cans for like 40 minutes, he laughed. "That bad, huh?" "Depends. You a fan of charcuterie and bad DJ remixes?" "Trick question," he said. "Charcuterie is always a yes." I smiled, a little more genuinely this time. "Then yeah, this party's terrible." He held out his hand. "I'm Nate." I took it. Eli. His hand was warm, firm. He had that kind of presence that made everything else fade out a little. The noise, the countdown chatter, the laughter from the living room, it all went soft around the edges. "You here with someone?" he asked, leaning casually against the counter. "Nope," I said. "Just me. You?" He shook his head. "Came straight from work. My sister begged me to show up. I think she's worried I'm going full hermit." Ironic. I said, "I made a resolution earlier tonight to do exactly that." Nate raised an eyebrow. "Already swearing off people before midnight?" "Not people," I said. "Just dating." "Bad year?" I paused, then gave him a look. "You ever meet someone who checks every box until the second they don't?" He chuckled. "More than once." "Well, I'm done checking boxes. No expectations, no second chances. I just want a clean year." His smile faded into something more thoughtful. Fair enough. We stood there in silence for a few beats. He was close now. I could smell his cologne. Clean, warm, something woodsy but not overpowering. His shoulder almost brushed mine. I didn't step away. A shout went up from the living room. 10! 9! We both glanced toward the noise, then back at each other. "Guess we're almost there," I said. "Still time to change your mind," he said with a half smile. "About the resolution," I laughed softly. "It hasn't even started yet." "Exactly," he said. 8, 7. "Let me guess," I said. "You're the type who makes a big New Year's list every year?" He shook his head. "Actually, I told myself I wasn't going to kiss anyone this New Year's." I grinned. "Now that's original." "Yeah, well," he said, his gaze settling on mine again. "I also told myself I wasn't going to talk to anyone at this party. But then I saw you. I didn't know what to say. My stomach twisted in that way it does when you know you're about to cross a line you'll never uncross. 6, 5! Neither of us moved. I could feel the air between us shift, stretch, tighten. 4! "You really want to start the year kissing a complete stranger?" I asked, my voice low. Only if he wants to kiss me back, he said. 3. I looked at his mouth. 2. I looked into his eyes. 1. I kissed him. The kiss wasn't some explosive movie moment. It was tentative at first, curious. The kind that asks a question before giving you the answer. His lips were soft, and he leaned in just enough to let me decide how far it went. I hadn't kissed anyone in months, and it showed in the way I hesitated. But the second I felt the heat of his breath against mine, something cracked open. I leaned in, gave him more. In the background, people were yelling, "Happy New Year!" and setting off cheap party poppers. A champagne cork hit the ceiling. Someone started playing Auld Lang Syne way too loudly, but none of it really landed. It felt like we were sealed in a little soundproof bubble by that counter, by the drinks table, by the warmth of his hand now settling on my waist. It didn't last long, maybe 15 seconds, maybe 30. But I remember every flicker of it. When we pulled back, we didn't speak right away. We just looked at each other, half smiling like two people who both knew they'd just done something unplanned, impulsive, and somehow absolutely right. "Well," Nate said, brushing a thumb against his jaw, "so much for no kissing." I swallowed. Same. He looked down, almost like he was suddenly shy, then back up. "Didn't think I'd meet someone in the last 7 minutes of the year." "Technically," I said, "you met me in the last 7 minutes of last year." He chuckled. "True. New Year loophole." Someone jostled past us trying to get to the fridge, and the moment shifted. We both stepped back a bit, suddenly aware again of the party around us. "I should probably go find my sister," Nate said after a beat. "She'll be pissed if I don't at least say hi." I nodded, not really sure what came next. "Yeah, of course." He lingered, like he wanted to say something else but didn't. Then he smiled and backed away, disappearing into the throng of half-drunk partiers shouting over each other in the living room. And just like that, he was gone. I stood there, touching my lips like I needed proof it happened. That it hadn't just been a weird dream conjured by too many beers and not enough sleep. But no, it was real. He was real. And I had no idea if I was going to see him again. I didn't see Nate for the rest of the party. I stayed until a little after 1 a.m., chatting half-heartedly with Caleb and some acquaintances, my eyes drifting toward the hallway now and then, hoping I'd spot his navy coat or catch his laugh through the crowd. But nothing. When I finally gave up and went to find my own coat, the front door was wide open and snow was falling again. The wind bit at my neck as I stepped outside and pulled my phone from my pocket, already bracing for the letdown. No new messages. No Instagram tags. No. "Hey, this is Nate from the party DM." He hadn't even asked for my number. I stood under the dim porch light for a second, watching my breath ghost in the cold air, then trudged down the steps. My resolution echoed in the back of my head. No dating this year, just peace. But my heart was already chewing a hole through that promise. 2 days passed. I kept thinking about him. Not just the kiss, but the way he looked at me before it. Like he saw something in me that wasn't just about the moment. Like he wasn't just kissing a stranger in a kitchen, but someone he was hoping to meet without even knowing it. I checked with Caleb. "Do you know who Nate is?" "Navy coat. Came in late. Might have been someone's brother?" Caleb shook his head. "Was he at the New Year's thing?" "Yeah, just before midnight." "No idea, man. I was too far gone by then." "Maybe he was a +1. I thought about messaging the host, but it felt desperate. And what would I even say? Hey, remember that random guy you might not even know who kissed me and vanished like a Netflix cliffhanger? Can I get his last name and socials? So I let it sit. I tried to forget. And then, a week later, I saw him again. It was a Friday night, and I was at the bookstore cafe around the corner from my apartment. Not for anything interesting, just grabbing a coffee and waiting for a friend who ended up bailing. I was halfway through pretending to read a short story collection when the little bell over the door chimed. I didn't look up at first. Then I heard a familiar voice, warm, low, just slightly amused. say, I still don't know what half these titles mean. I looked up. There he was. Nate, holding a code in one hand, scanning a nearby bookshelf, talking to the barista like he'd been here before. He looked relaxed, slightly flushed from the cold, and even better than I remembered. I froze. My stomach flipped so hard I almost dropped my coffee. He hadn't seen me yet. I had a choice: pretend I didn't notice, slip out quietly and let the mystery stay intact, or go up and say something. Risk the awkward. Risk the rejection. But also, maybe, risk changing everything. I stood up. Hey, I said, voice steadier than I expected. He turned, brow furrowed for a second, and then he saw me. His expression shifted so fast it almost made me laugh, from confusion to shock to something like relief. Eli? I nodded. Didn't think I'd see you again. He smiled, slow and a little sheepish. Yeah, me neither. He paused, raking a hand through his hair. I've been kind of kicking myself for not getting your number that night. Well, I said, heart thudding, you just got lucky. He laughed, and this time he didn't hesitate. Can I fix that mistake? I handed him my phone. He typed his number in fast, then paused like he was second-guessing the name field. What do I save it under? I asked. He grinned. Put Nate, the guy who ruined your resolution. I laughed, despite the nerves still crawling through me. It's oddly specific. It'll help you remember, he said, handing the phone back. I don't think that's going to be a problem, I said quietly. Something flickered across his face. Something between pride and embarrassment. Then the barista called his order, breaking the tension. He grabbed his coffee, leaned against the counter beside me, and exhaled like he was debating what to say next. So I started, trying to sound casual. Do you always kiss strangers before the year even starts? He smirked. No, you were a first. Lucky me. Or unlucky, depending on how you felt about it. I'm still deciding. He chuckled softly, then took a sip of his coffee. The cafe was quiet, except for the hum of the espresso machine and the faint buzz of rain against the windows. The city outside looked washed out and gray, but in that small corner by the bookshelf, something about it felt warm again. So he said after a pause, I know it's cliché, but do you want to sit? Maybe actually talk this time? I raised an eyebrow. And risk breaking more resolutions? I already broke mine the minute I walked in here, he said. Might as well go all in. We sat near the window. He set his coat over the back of the chair, rolled his sleeves up, and leaned forward like he actually wanted to listen. I didn't expect that. Most first conversations I'd had, dates, or whatever they counted as, felt like small talk marathons. But with Nate, it was different. He didn't fill the silence with fluff. He asked questions that mattered, like he wasn't afraid to dig a little. So why the resolution, he asked. I stared into my coffee. I guess I got tired of the cycle. You meet someone, it's good for a bit, then something falls apart. You start thinking maybe it's better to just opt out for a while. Give your brain a rest. Yeah, he said quietly. That sounds familiar. I looked up. You too? He nodded. My last relationship ended in October. 3 years. We were living together. He wanted different things. Or maybe I did. I don't know. But when it ended, I told myself I needed a reset. No dating, no distractions. Let me guess, I said. You lasted until 11:53 p.m.? He smiled. Apparently, yeah. Something about how he said it made my chest tighten. Not in a bad way, but like my heart recognized something I hadn't wanted to admit. Maybe we were both just tired people who found each other at the wrong time. Or maybe the timing was exactly right. The conversation stretched longer than I expected. We talked about work, favorite films, music we listened to when we couldn't sleep. He told me about his job, graphic designer for a small agency, and how he hated client revisions but loved late-night projects where he could lose track of time. I told him about teaching high school English, about how my students were chaotic and funny and kept me grounded. Somewhere between a second coffee and a half-eaten muffin, I realized 2 hours had gone by. When I checked the time, it was close to 9. The cafe lights had dimmed, signaling closing soon. He noticed me glancing at the clock and sighed. You have somewhere to be? No, I was just thinking how fast that went. He smiled. Guess time moves differently when you're breaking resolutions. I shook my head, laughing. You're really going to keep milking that line, huh? As long as it works, he said. And it did. It worked too well. When we stepped outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. The city was quieter now, headlights slicing through fog. I zipped my jacket up, shivering slightly. You parked nearby? He asked. Yeah, around the corner. He hesitated, then said, Do you want me to walk you there? I could have said no. Should have said no, maybe. But instead, I just nodded. Sure. We walked without saying much. The air smelled like wet pavement and coffee beans. At one point, our hands brushed. Just barely. Enough to make me notice. When we reached my car, I turned to face him. Well, I said, this was unexpected. In a good way, I hope? In a weirdly good way. He smiled, that slow, careful smile that felt like it carried unspoken words. Maybe I could call you tomorrow? I wanted to play it cool, say something non-committal, but my mouth betrayed me. Yeah, please do. He took a step closer. Not close enough to kiss, but enough to let the warmth of him linger between us. I will. Then he turned and started down the block, the faint streetlight catching the side of his face. I stood there until he disappeared around the corner. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was overanalyzing, but because my brain wouldn't shut up. His laugh, his voice, the way his eyes softened when he talked about design, it all looped in my head like a song I didn't know I'd memorized. I told myself it was nothing, just post-New Year's energy. A coincidence. But the truth was, it had been a long time since something had felt that easy, that right. And when his text came the next afternoon, coffee again? Or maybe something less caffeinated? I didn't even hesitate before typing back. Dinner. My turn to ruin your resolution. The following Friday, we met at a small Korean place downtown, the kind with fogged-up windows and barely enough tables for 10 people. Nate was already there when I arrived, his coat draped over the back of the chair, a glass of water in front of him. Hey, he said, standing when he saw me. His eyes lit up like he actually meant it. Glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Dinner went the same way the cafe had. Unrushed, open, easy. The kind of night where you forget to check your phone. He made me laugh more than I'd expected to. At one point, I caught myself staring at him between conversations, realizing how effortlessly he fit into the picture of my evening, like he'd always belonged there. When we stepped outside after paying the bill, snow had started falling again, thin, lazy flakes drifting under the streetlights. Guess the universe is sticking to a theme, he said, brushing a few flakes from his hair. Yeah, I said. Same weather, same person? Maybe it's a sign. He tilted his head, smiling. What kind of sign? I shrugged. That maybe some resolutions are meant to be broken twice. He laughed, low and warm. Your trouble, Eli. Not yet, I said, but give me time. He stepped closer, his breath visible in the cold. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The snow fell slower, quieter, and everything around us blurred until there was just him. When he leaned in this time, there was no countdown, no background noise, no crowd to hide us. Just the quiet, the snow, and the taste of something new beginning. I kissed him back without thinking. And this time, it didn't feel like breaking a rule. It felt like rewriting one. The thing about falling for someone when you swore you wouldn't, you notice it in the quiet moments first, like how you start checking your phone in the morning not for work emails but to see if they said goodnight. Or how a song you didn't care about before suddenly feels like it's about them. Or how you catch yourself wondering if they'd laugh at a dumb meme you scrolled past, and before you know it, you've sent it, and waited too long for a reply. By the end of January, Nate and I had gone on 4 proper dates, and a couple that weren't really dates, but still felt like them. Lazy Saturday mornings at the flea market, a Target run that turned into an hour of debating which throw blanket was most emotionally supportive, late-night ramen and movie marathons at my place. We hadn't talked about what we were. There were no labels, no DTR conversation. But the way he looked at me when I wasn't talking, the way his hand would find mine under the table, it was there, unsaid, but thick in the air between us. One night, we sat on my couch watching a documentary about stolen art. I wasn't really following the plot, because he was sitting close, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his thigh through his jeans. Halfway through, he reached for my hand, laced our fingers together, and just held it there on the blanket. Nothing dramatic. Just held it. I remember thinking, this feels like the beginning of something big. And then, almost immediately, which means it has the potential to fall apart too. That's the cruel irony of meeting someone when your guard's finally up. When your walls are strong, reinforced, and neatly labeled, "Do not enter," the right person doesn't knock. They just walk in like they've always had a key. And Nate? He was already in. The next weekend, he invited me over for dinner at his place. His apartment was smaller than mine, but somehow cozier. Plants on the windowsills, Polaroids pinned to a corkboard. Sketchbooks stacked beside the couch. There was a dent in the wall by the hallway where he said he dropped a bookshelf once and just decided to live with the consequences. It made me like him even more. He cooked pasta, actual pasta, not box and jar. When I teased him about being fancy, he just shrugged. "You can tell a lot about someone by how they cook," he said. "Or if they even try." "You trying to impress me?" I asked. He looked up from the stove. "Is it working?" I smiled. "I'm a sucker for garlic and emotional vulnerability, so yeah, pretty much." Over dinner, we talked about everything and nothing. His childhood, my weird teaching stories. The year he spent living out of his car post-college and how it taught him to be violently grateful for clean towels. I told him about my dad, who left when I was 15, and how I still didn't know if I was mad about it or just tired. He didn't flinch. Just listened, nodded, poured more wine. When we finished eating, he leaned back and looked at me for a long moment. Not in a creepy way. Just like he was trying to memorize something, the shape of my face. The way I looked when I wasn't performing. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "Do you still think about that resolution?" I blinked. "The no dating thing?" He nodded. I considered lying. Or making a joke. But something about the look in his eyes made me want to give the real answer. "Yeah," I said. Not in the same way, though. I think I made it because I didn't trust myself anymore. I kept choosing people who didn't choose me back. So I figured, if I take myself off the market, I can't screw it up again. He didn't say anything right away. Then he reached across the table and rested his hand on mine. "Maybe you just hadn't met someone who knew what to do with you," he said quietly. That's when I knew I was in real trouble. We started spending more time together after that. Not in some whirlwind, head over heels montage kind of way. It was quieter than that. He'd bring over takeout and help me grade papers. I'd sit at the edge of his bed while he sketched logos for clients and made frustrated noises when his iPad glitched. We started sharing routines, groceries, playlists. It felt good. Safe. Which, of course, meant it couldn't stay that way. Because real intimacy, it brings out your best, but it also drags up the worst. The ghosts you thought you buried. The habits you swore you outgrew. It started small. We were at a bar with a few of his friends. One of them, a guy named Josh, had known Nate for years and clearly had that easy, tactile kind of friendship with him. The kind where they'd lean close to talk, touch arms while laughing. Nothing flirty, just familiar. But I couldn't stop watching. At one point, Nate excused himself to go to the bathroom, and Josh turned to me. "You're good for him," he said. I blinked. "Thanks." "He's been different lately. Happier. Lighter." I nodded slowly. "He seems good to me, too." Josh smiled. "Glad to hear it." It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Like he knew Nate better than I did. Like he'd been there longer. Seen more. Maybe even wanted more once upon a time. When Nate came back and slid into the booth beside me, I was already halfway in my own head. He noticed instantly. "You okay?" "Yeah, fine." But I wasn't. And that night, when we got back to my place and he tried to kiss me in the hallway, I pulled away just a little too fast. "Hey," he said, searching my face. "Talk to me." "I'm just tired," I lied. He studied me for a second, then nodded. "Okay, we don't have to talk tonight. But don't shut me out, all right?" I nodded, but the guilt pooled in my chest like wet cement. Because I already had. The fear didn't hit all at once. It crept in slow. Little things. A delayed text response. A canceled dinner. A night he didn't sleep over. My brain would spiral instantly. He's losing interest. He's pulling away. He found someone better. It didn't matter that none of it was true. It didn't matter that he kept showing up, kept calling, kept choosing me, because somewhere deep down, I didn't believe I was worth being chosen. That's the thing no one tells you about trying to be loved when you've built your whole identity around being alone. It's not just about letting someone in. It's about not pushing them out when they knock. I didn't mean to pick a fight. It was one of those nights where nothing had really gone wrong, but everything felt a little off. He'd come over late, after finishing a late-night edit for a client who had changed the deadline at the last minute. He was tired, distracted. I could tell the second he walked through the door. He didn't kiss me when he came in. Just tossed his bag down and mumbled something about traffic and emails and, "Can we just veg out tonight?" Of course I said yes. I always said yes. But while he was curled up at the far end of the couch, scrolling on his phone with his free hand buried in a bowl of popcorn, one sat there, stewing. Not angry, just insecure, hyper-aware of how the space between us felt wider than it had in weeks, so I blurted it out. "You don't have to come over if you're not feeling it." He looked up, confused. "What?" "You don't owe me time, Nate. If you're busy, just say so." His brow furrowed. "What are you talking about? I wanted to see you." "You barely looked at me when you walked in." He set the popcorn down slowly. "Because I had a crap day. And I knew if I could just get here, I'd finally be able to breathe. That's why I came. To breathe. With you." I looked down, ashamed. I don't know. You've been quiet lately." "I've been tired, Eli. Work's been crazy. That's it." "Are you sure that's it?" I said, instantly regretting it. Nate sat back, the hurt obvious now. "Where's this coming from?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know. Maybe I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop." He didn't speak for a long second. Then, why? Because it always does. Nate leaned forward, elbows on his knees, like he was trying to pull the words out of me with just his gaze. "I'm not them," he said quietly. "I know." "Then stop treating me like I am." His voice wasn't harsh. It was steady, sad even, and it landed harder than if he'd yelled. "I want this, Eli. I'm here, aren't I?" "I'm just scared," I admitted. "Scared that I'm going to mess this up. Scared that you're going to wake up one day and realize I'm not worth it." Nate reached for my hand, gentle, deliberate. "Then let's be scared together," he said. "But don't run from me just because you're afraid of what this could be." I looked at him, and for a second I wanted to cry. Not because I was sad, but because I realized just how close I'd come to ruining something good, something real, with my own fear. So I leaned in, and I kissed him. Not to apologize, not to distract, just to say I hear you, I believe you, I'm still trying. That night, we lay in bed, with our arms tangled together, his fingers tracing soft shapes on my forearm. "I know we haven't really talked about what we are," he said, voice low in the dark. My stomach tightened. "Yeah, but I don't want to keep pretending this is casual," he said. "I'm not seeing anyone else. I don't want to. I like waking up with you. I like the way you fold your socks and how you can never eat a full burrito without it falling apart." I laughed into his chest. "Hey, burritos are deceptively engineered." He kissed the top of my head. "I'm serious. I know it's early, and we both came into this with our own baggage, but I think this could be something." I looked up at him, heart pounding. "You think so?" "I do. Even if I freak out sometimes and pick unnecessary fights because I'm scared." "Especially then," he said, "because it means you care." I wanted to say it then. "I think I'm falling for you," but I held it back. Not because I didn't mean it, but because I wanted to be sure the next time I said something big, I wasn't just reacting to the moment. In the days that followed, something shifted. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Nate would kiss me longer when he came in the door. He started leaving a toothbrush at my place. One night he brought over a hoodie he accidentally left and made a show of folding it in my drawer. We still hadn't labeled it. But everything we did pointed to one word neither of us had said yet. Together. It wasn't perfect. There were still little flare-ups. Like when he forgot to text after a late client dinner. And I spiraled for no reason. Or when I got weird about him going to a weekend retreat with friends, convinced I'd be left out of the inner circle of his life. But each time, we worked through it. Talked it out. Messy but honest. And for once, I wasn't scared of being known. I was scared of not being known by him. One night in early March, we were walking through the park near my place. It was still cold enough to see our breath, but the kind of cold that felt fresh, not punishing. He was holding my hand, swinging it slightly between us, humming a song I didn't recognize. "Can I tell you something weird?" he asked. "Always. Sometimes I think about how close I was to staying home that night." "What night?" "New Year's." "Oh, you mean the best night of your life?" He bumped my shoulder. "You joke, but yeah." I'd already taken my shoes off. I had popcorn in the microwave. I was going to binge some dumb sci-fi show. And then my sister called and guilted me into coming out. I smiled. "Thank her for me." "I do, every week." He stopped walking, pulling me to a halt beside him. The streetlights cast a pale yellow glow across the path. His cheeks were pink from the cold. "I didn't plan for you," he said. "I wasn't looking." "Me neither," I said. "But I'm really glad we happened." Something caught in my throat. It was too early for "I love you," maybe, but that didn't mean I didn't feel it. So instead I said, "Same. I think about it all the time." He leaned in and kissed me. Slow, deliberate. No countdown, no crowd. Just him and me and the city holding its breath. We kept walking. This time with fewer questions and fewer fears. It wasn't perfect. Nothing real ever is. But it was ours. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a weekend. Not a big anniversary. Not some romantic dinner with candles and violins and background jazz. Just a Tuesday. Mid-March. Slightly overcast. The kind of day where nothing extraordinary is supposed to happen. I was sick. Not deathbed sick. Just annoyingly congested, achy, and gross. I'd called off work, curled up in bed with tissues, Dayquil, and 2 blankets, fully ready to spend the next 24 hours in a pit of self-pity and fever dreams. Then Nate showed up. He didn't text ahead, didn't ask if I needed anything. He just showed up, knocked on the door with a tote bag full of things I didn't even know I needed. Soup from the Thai place down the street. My favorite orange soda. Those weird honey lozenges I mentioned once in passing. A pair of fuzzy socks that I still don't understand how he knew I'd love. And a bag of cough drops he claimed smelled like regret, but insisted were medically necessary. He walked in like he'd done it 100 times before, set everything on the counter, and then came into the bedroom, pausing in the doorway. "You look like shit," he said with a smirk. "Thanks," I croaked. He came over, crouched beside the bed, and placed a cool hand on my forehead. "Jesus, you're burning up." I was trying to go for warm and approachable, but yeah, fever works too. He laughed softly, brushing some hair off my forehead. "You should have told me you were sick." "You were busy today." "And you're an idiot," he said, standing and pulling the blankets up tighter around me. "Scoot." "What?" He started to unlace his shoes. "I'm getting in. Someone has to make sure you're not dying in your sleep." Bold move, coming into a plague zone. He kicked off his shoes and climbed into bed behind me, wrapping an arm around my waist. "If I get sick, I get sick. Worth it." It was the kind of simple gesture that hit way too hard. I laid there silently, letting him hold me, feeling the warmth of him seep through the layers of blankets and congestion and loneliness I hadn't even realized was still hanging around. And then, as he rested his chin gently on my shoulder and started whispering dumb things about how ugly my cough sounded and how no one should be allowed to sneeze like that in a shared bed, it hit me like a truck. I loved him. No warm-up, no testing the idea, just bam. I was in love with Nate. The realization didn't come with fireworks, more like an internal earthquake. Quiet, but shifting something massive under the surface. I didn't say it that night. I couldn't, not while I looked and sounded like a medieval plague victim. But it clung to every word I didn't say. When he helped me sit up to sip soup. When he rubbed slow circles into my back after a coughing fit. When he fell asleep, snoring gently behind me, hands still resting on my hip like he was afraid I'd vanish. I didn't sleep much. My body was fighting a fever, but my brain was stuck on one loop. I love him. I love him. I love him. And beneath that, what the hell do I do now? A few days later, when I was feeling human again, we were back in his apartment. Saturday morning, sunlight bleeding through the curtains. He's making coffee in the kitchen, barefoot in his joggers and a hoodie I'd stolen from him once and returned reluctantly. I sat on the edge of the counter, watching him, pretending to be interested in some Instagram reel, while my chest screamed, "Tell him, tell him, tell him." But I didn't. Because now that I knew, the idea of saying it felt terrifying. We hadn't talked about love, or futures, or anything deeper than what we wanted for dinner, or what show to binge next. What if he didn't feel it? What if I said it too soon, and it ruined the whole fragile thing we'd built? "Penny for your thoughts," he said, sliding a mug into my hands and kissing my temple. "Just thinking about how good this coffee smells." He raised an eyebrow. "Liar. Complicated liar." He smiled and let it go. But I knew he could feel something shifting too. He was intuitive like that. He didn't always push, but he always noticed. Later that night, we were lying in his bed, lights low, music playing soft in the background. I was half asleep, head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle lines across my spine. He spoke into the quiet. "You ever think about where this is going?" I held my breath. "Sometimes," I said. "You?" "Yeah." He didn't elaborate. I pulled back a little so I could look at him. "What do you mean?" I don't know," he said. "You're the first person in a long time I can actually picture things with. Not just weekends and sleepovers. Like real things. The messy, boring, everyday parts too." My heart thudded so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I feel that way too," I said carefully. His eyes softened. "Yeah? Yeah." There was a long pause. I almost said it then. "I love you." It was on the tip of my tongue. But he kissed me before I could speak. Soft, slow, like he already knew. And maybe he did. Maybe he was waiting too. A week later, it happened. I'd had a rough day. One of my students had a breakdown in class, and I'd spent most of the afternoon doing paperwork and trying not to cry from sheer exhaustion. I texted Nate, not saying much, just that it had been a shitty day and I didn't want to talk about it. He showed up anyway. Knocked on my door with takeout and a bad movie queued up on his phone. Didn't ask questions. Just sat beside me, handed me food, and leaned into me like he was plugging me back into the world. Halfway through the movie, he reached for my hand. And I said it. Quiet. Almost a whisper. "I love you." He turned to me, eyes wide. Surprised, but not shocked. Like he'd been waiting too. He didn't hesitate. "I love you too." And just like that, everything settled. The noise in my head. The weight in my chest. The fear. The doubt. The second guessing. Gone. Because for once, I didn't have to carry it alone. We didn't plan it. We didn't rehearse it. It wasn't perfect or dramatic, it was just real. And after all the noise of past years, the breakups, the bad dates, the nights wondering if I was meant to be alone, there was something revolutionary about love that felt quiet, solid, steady. The kind that starts at 11:53 p.m. and stays. Falling in love is one thing. Staying in love is another. After the "I love yous," the world didn't suddenly shift. There were no fireworks or doves or background choirs. But something in us did settle, like the floor beneath our feet had finally stopped shaking. We started talking differently. Not more, necessarily, but deeper. The silences between us grew more comfortable. I no longer felt like I had to fill every pause with humor or reassurance. Sometimes we'd just exist in the same space, doing completely different things. Him sketching, me grading papers or reading, and that was enough. I started calling him home in my head. The first time we talked about living together, it happened by accident. It was late April. We were in his kitchen, surrounded by groceries we hadn't put away yet, eating cereal straight from the box because neither of us wanted to cook. I was scrolling through Zillow listings on my phone, mostly out of boredom. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, I said, scrolling. Looks like a shoebox with central air. "Let me see," Nate said, leaning over my shoulder. "Oh, I think I know that building. Terrible parking." You've been apartment hunting before? I asked, surprised. Last year, he said. Before everything went to shit with my ex, we'd been looking. The air shifted slightly. You okay talking about that? I asked carefully. Yeah, he said. I mean, it sucked, obviously. But we weren't right for each other, not in the ways that matter. I nodded. Still, I get it. I was there too. I mean, not with your ex. He snorted. Thank God. We fell into silence for a second. Then I said, more to the cereal than to him, I've thought about what it'd be like to live with you. He looked up, eyes suddenly sharp. Yeah? Yeah. He didn't say anything right away, just sat with it. Then, I think we'd be okay. I smiled. Just okay? I mean, we'd probably fight about cabinet organization and who leaves the lights on. I'll own up to the lights. And the clutter. I'm a creative, Nate. He grinned. I thought I was the creative. Fine. We're both messy creatives. He reached out, stole a piece of cereal from my hand, and said, If we live together, I think I'd like waking up next to you every day. My throat tightened a little. I think I'd like that too, I said. We didn't rush into anything. There was no big, dramatic move-in date. Instead, it started with a drawer, then a toothbrush, then a pile of his t-shirts mysteriously multiplying in my laundry. By the start of June, we were basically living together without ever officially deciding to. It felt right. Of course, there were challenges. Nate was clean, but in a chaotic, neutral way. He had 5 open design programs on his laptop at any given time and could never find his wallet, but God help you if you misplaced one of his plant spritzers. I, on the other hand, liked structure, labels, grocery lists, schedules. I didn't think of myself as rigid, just prepared. Nate lovingly called me Type A with a heart of gold. I called him a walking Pinterest board powered by vibes and iced coffee. Our systems clashed sometimes. Like the morning I found my favorite mug repurposed as a makeshift paintbrush holder on the balcony. Or the time I reorganized his spice rack alphabetically and nearly started a Cold War. But for every petty squabble, there were moments that felt like quiet gold. Waking up to him sleep-mumbling nonsense into my shoulder. Dancing in the kitchen to lo-fi beats while pasta boiled. Him dragging a blanket onto the floor so we could watch thunderstorms from the balcony in silence. One night, we were curled up in bed. He was half asleep, my fingers lazily tracing shapes on his chest, and I said it out loud. I'm not scared anymore. He opened one eye. Of what? Us. He smiled softly, pulled me closer, and whispered, Me neither. But the fear? It didn't vanish completely. It just evolved. Because once you have something good, something real, you start being scared of losing it. And when summer hit, so did the first real test. Nate got offered a job. A big one. An agency in Chicago had seen his work online, loved his portfolio, and wanted him to lead a campaign. 6 months. High pay. Huge opportunity. He told me about it over lunch at the park. Fingers picking at the corner of his sandwich. I haven't said yes yet, he said. But they want an answer soon. My stomach dropped, but I tried not to let it show. That's amazing, I said. Seriously, Nate, that's huge. Yeah, but it's in Chicago. I nodded slowly. Do you want to go? I asked. I don't know, he said. I mean, yes, I want to do the work. It's everything I've been trying to build toward, but I don't want to leave this. He didn't need to explain what this meant. It was me. Us. Everything we'd made. I don't want to hold you back, I said. You're not. I don't want to be a reason you regret something later. He was quiet. Then he said, Would you ever come with me? I hesitated. I can't, I said softly. The school year starts in August. My kids, my job. I can't just disappear on them. He nodded, looking down. Then maybe we do distance, I offered. I've done long distance, he said. It's brutal. I've done heartbreak, I replied. It's worse. That made him laugh. But it wasn't a happy laugh. We don't have to decide right now, I said. But whatever happens, we talk it out. No disappearing. No assumptions. We fight for this. Deal? He looked at me, eyes full of something raw and terrifying and beautiful. Deal. The day Nate left for Chicago, I didn't go with him to the airport. Not because I didn't want to. I did. I wanted to hold his hand through security, kiss him at the gate, cry like people do in movies when the plane takes off. But we both knew it would hurt too much. So instead, we said goodbye at my apartment, quietly, just after sunrise. The city was still half asleep. The streets were soft with morning fog. He stood in the doorway with his suitcase and a hoodie I'd probably end up stealing back before the end of the year. I'm not saying goodbye, he said. Not really. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Then, what is this? A pause, he said. That's all. He kissed me once, soft and long, like he was memorizing the shape of my mouth, and then turned and walked out. Suitcase wheels clicking down the hall like punctuation marks I didn't want to read. The first week without him was brutal. Everything in the apartment screamed Nate, his mug, his sketch pad, the way his scent still clung to my sheets. I kept reaching for my phone to text him dumb things, only to remember he was in meetings or out scouting locations or just too far away to walk through the door and curl up beside me like nothing had changed. We FaceTimed every night, sometimes for hours, sometimes just a sleepy, "Hey, you good?" and a smile before bed. But it wasn't the same. Every conversation had a gap where his presence should be, a half-second lag between words. A silence before we said goodbye that neither of us wanted to fill with what we were actually thinking. Can we really do this? By August, the rhythm had shifted. We'd gotten used to it. Kind of. Weekly routines, video calls, surprise deliveries, a shared Google Doc full of date ideas for when we're back in the same zip code. But the cracks were there. He missed a call once, then twice. Then a week passed where we barely connected. He apologized. Work was insane. The agency had doubled his hours. They wanted him for more projects. "I'm sorry," he said over the phone one night. "I hate this. I hate being this far." "I know," I said, trying to sound calm. "Me too." There was a pause. "I don't know what to do," he said. And for a second I thought, this is it. This is where we break. But then I heard him exhale, shaky, tired. "I just miss you so much," he whispered. "I miss you too." And in that moment, we weren't falling apart. We were just holding on tighter. When fall came, things changed again. Nate got offered a permanent position. It was everything he'd worked for. A real title, real money, a real shot at building something huge. And once again, we had to talk. He flew home for a weekend in late September. He met me outside school after my last class on a Friday, leaned against my car like it hadn't been 3 months since I'd last seen him. I kissed him without saying anything. "God, I missed your face," he murmured. We went back to my place, ordered takeout, and didn't leave the bed until well past noon the next day. On Sunday morning, we sat on the balcony with coffee and his fingers laced through mine. "They want me to stay," he said. I nodded slowly. "I haven't answered yet, because I needed to talk to you first." "Okay." "I love you," he said. "That hasn't changed. It's never going to change." "But?" I asked. "But this job, it's big, Eli. It's the kind of thing I've been working toward for years." "And you should take it," I said, even though it made my chest ache. "I don't want to lose you," he said. "Not for a job, not for anything." "Then we figure it out," I said. "We always do." He was quiet. Then he said, "Come with me." I looked at him, startled. "I know it's huge, and I know it's asking a lot. But maybe you could teach there, or freelance, or take time. I don't know. I don't want to keep living 2 lives. I want you and mine." I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. Because I thought about it every day since the moment he left. Because I'd already made up my mind. 2 months later, I stood in a new apartment in Chicago. My stuff was still in boxes. His dog-eared cookbooks were on the counter. My classroom supplies were stacked in a corner, waiting for a January start at a new school. Nate came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, and kissed the back of my neck. "You okay?" he whispered. I turned to face him. "I'm better than okay." He smiled. "You sure? No regrets?" I shook my head. "Only that I ever thought a resolution was stronger than this." He laughed. "What was it again? No dating in 2026? I kissed him. "Pretty sure I broke that one at 11:53 p.m. And this time, when we kissed, it wasn't the beginning of something uncertain. It was the continuation of something real. Messy, imperfect, human, but real. And I wouldn't have had it any other way."